Good day to you, everybody. You're watching the BRS, the Behaviour Revolution Scriptures. I'm Mark, and I've got to tell you, I'm thoroughly enjoying taking you through these scriptures. It's been amazing for me to just read up on what they're all saying, these scriptures mean, what the Jews are saying and what the rabbis are saying, what the Messianic and the Nazarene and the Christians, what they're all sitting around going, No ruach, of course, no spirit or essence or guidance from Yahushua's spirit, most of them, but I find it fascinating to read up on it and just fill myself with these understandings and then go, what do you think, Yahushua? What do you think, Father, about all this? You know, is this what you intended when you wrote this? Because today, we don't want all that. We don't want all that in our lives, all that cultural, religious, liturgy, stuff that means nothing to us. We want to have the experience of Moses walking into our business today, walking into our homes, giving us these instructions. What would he say? Yahushua, the prophets, what would they say if they were to come into our homes today and teach us, encourage us, guide us with what they know? That's the essence behind these scriptures, and that's why I'm thoroughly enjoying going through them. So today we're going to be talking about listening and hearing. You can see here, no, this is not a white person yelling at a black person, all right? It's just occurred to me that these are two kids playing silly buggers, all right? So just calm down. I can hear you, but I'm not listening. I can hear you, but I'm not listening. So there's a difference between hearing and listening. And we'll get into this as we go along, but hearing is accidental, involuntary, and effortless. We hear lots of things. Physically and spiritually, we hear things, don't we? Things we don't want to hear often. But listening, you've got to be focused. It's voluntary and it's intentional. Yeah? The Hebrew word shema means to hear intently, to listen and give your attention in order to diligently understand, obey and witness, which is to behave as truth. So you're not just hearing something, you're intently listening in order to diligently understand it, obey it and behave it, put it into you as truth. So in Deuteronomy chapter 6, this is all about listening. Moses is still, last chapter we dealt with the 10 commandments, the 10 words, the marriage vows, the instructions, and there's no breaks. And we've got chapters here, but there's no breaks. Moses keeps going. And he says, so Yisharal, you must carefully obey Yahuwah's instructions, guard and follow them, because they're a path that leads to a long, successful life in the land that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. So don't turn off this path to the right or to the left, but walk in this special way that's been given to you by your Creator. Makes sense? These instructions are a pathway of behavior. Don't get distracted to the right or to the left, you'll fall off the path. Because soon you'll cross the Jordan River and take that land. And if you and your descendants want to live a long, prosperous life, you must always fear Yahuwah and obey his instructions. Have you got it? Do you understand? Pay close attention, Yisharal. Our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, trusted Yahuwah. And he promised to give their descendants this land that is rich with milk and honey. So make sure you obey him, and you will become a great, successful, and powerful nation. Listen, Yisharal. Hear me now and get this into your skulls. Yahuwah is the only living Elohim, and he is one. Got it? Not 2, 3, 4, or 5. One. He's one. None of the others are real. They're all fake. A rip-off. Smoke and mirrors. A great lie to deceive you. So love Yahuwah, your Elohim, with all of your heart, with all of your being, and with all of your strength. Let's pause for a moment there. There's a lot of stuff in there. And there's opinions flowing left, right and centre about these scriptures. People have taken them and plastered them and made money on them and done all sorts of things. This portion of scripture has been traditionalized and liturgized by the religious rabbis into a daily prayer, often recited 3 times a day. It's been given a separate title to the Shema. See the picture above for the true Hebrew meaning. The statement that begins this section, "Listen, Yisharal," was even important enough for Yahushua himself to quote directly. Okay, let's go back over here for a second. It's been given a separate title, the Shema. Why? What does Shema mean? Shema means to hear, to listen. Religious folks like to quote it in its purest form, which is, "Hear, O Israel! Hear, O Yisharal! Yisrael is one." You know, "Hear, O Israel." I don't like the word "hear" because, as we've seen up here, have a look up here, to look at the word "hear." Yeah, see? Hear. Hearing is actually, we hear lots of things. Listen is a better word. Listen up. Pay attention. Listen up. So this section here is what they call the Shema. A big, serious prayer that they have to pray 3 times a day. Because, of course, that's what you do, don't you? You know, got to pray. Got to make it an official prayer. "Hear, O Yisharal." So our version's real. "Listen, Yisharal, hear me now and get this into your skulls. Yahuwah is the only living Elohim and he's one. He is one. Not 2, 3, 4 or 5, one. None of the others are real. They're all fake, rip-off, smoke mirrors, great lie. So love Yahuwah your Elohim with all of your heart, with all of your being, and with all of your strength." What I did find interesting is I thought Yahushua said this. I thought it was Yahushua who summarized the instructions and said this. Look, it's right here. Moses says it. So that's what they call the Shema, the religious prayer of the Jewish people. The rabbis are all into all that. Taking the scriptures and turning them into a religious lifestyle and dead ritual. The statement that begins this section, "Listen, Yisharal," was even important enough for Yahushua himself to directly quote when the religious folks tried to trip him up. This is Yahushua here in Mark 12. One of the scribes came and heard their discussion and, recognizing that Yahushua knew what he was talking about, asked, "Rabbi, what do you think the most important instruction of Moses is?" And Yahushua answered, "Easy. It's obviously, listen, Yisharal. Yahuwah is the only living Elohim and he is one. So love him with all of your heart, being, mind and strength." And that goes hand in hand with loving your neighbor as yourself. They're the most important behaviors because all the other instructions are summed up in them. So Yahushua quoted this scripture here that Moses gave right after the 10 Commandments and right here in Deuteronomy. So I find that fascinating because my mind goes back to sermons I've heard over the years. You know, the instructions of Moses were all rigid and harsh, and the Messiah came along and said, "Just love." And look, Messiah was quoting here. Nonsense, isn't it? Moses goes on to explain that loving Yahushua is vital for behaving his instructions, because it's his instructions that establish the terms of the relationship between him and Yisharal. However, the source of Yisharal's obedience to Yahushua was not to be forced from some dead, barren, and robotic legalism. Rather, it was to spring forth from a response of love. Yes, Yahushua says that obedience to him is the correct response of love, as he defines it. To love him is to be obedient to him. Make sense? So we don't obey him robotically, callously, like it's just a religious ritual that we do. We can't even remember why we're doing it. We just do it like what happens with the feasts often. We don't know. They mean nothing because they're just repetitive liturgy, legalistic this stuff. We don't do it because of that reason. We obey him because we love him, because we want to please him. We want a response, not monetary or, that kind of response. A response, even just feeling of love. We want to be closer to him. We want more of him. Yes, Yahusha says that obedience to him is the correct response of love. So don't hear me saying that that's legalism, we shouldn't be being obedient. I'm saying you shouldn't be being obedient for the sake of it. Dead religious liturgy. No, we are obedient because we love him. Yeah? So what is love? It's only since Greco-Roman times that the concept of love moved away from being an action, behavior, instead became an emotion, a sensation of inner warmth. Make sense? The scriptural Hebrews would never have recognized the modern secular and religious view of love we have today in the 21st century as being a warm, fuzzy feeling of compassion or affection towards one another. That's not what the Hebrews thought love was, experienced love as. No way. In the Webster's Dictionary, there are 9 different definitions for the word love, and every one of them speak only of emotion, tender feelings, affection, sexual passion, a feeling of brotherhood, and a strong liking. But to the Hebrews and to Yahusha, love, while involving emotion, demands an outward response, an action, a behavior, or it wasn't love. Yahusha says, don't say you love me and then turn around and deny my instructions, because if you deny my instructions, then you don't love me. Does that make sense? So it's only been since the Greco-Roman times that the concept of love moved away from being an action and became an emotion. That's why love today is always gushy-mushy emotions, but originally love was a behavior. It was something that, had an outward response. So our outward response is that we want to obey obediently. Not just the ink on the page and say we're obedient, we've done what it says. No, we want to experience him and be behaving the right fruit. Love, joy, peace, patience. And that's very hard to do unless you are tapping in and conscious. Yeah? So love is a behavior. Obedient behavior. Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Echad. Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Echad. Habibi. Yeah? That means Yahuwah is our Elohim and he is one. The essence of this statement transcends our very limited physical 4-dimensional world and finite human mind. What does? That statement there. Remember when we looked at it? Listen, Yisharal. Yahuwah is Elohim. He, the only real living Elohim, and he is one. This statement transcends our very limited 4-dimensional world and finite human mind. But at the very least, we can say that it means that Yahusha is the only Elohim that exists. He is the only object of worship that is permitted for his followers. He is completely unified, as there are not various pieces of him that can be separated into persons. There are not various pieces of him that can be separated into persons. And he is our Elohim, in the sense that he has established a mutual relationship between himself and all who submit to him in love. Furthermore, we know his personal name, Yahuwah, Yahusha. And we know from the first 2 words of Shema Yisharal, listen Yisharal, that this statement of his being and nature was directed to Yisharal only. And by definition, all that would engraft and join themselves to Yisharal. Very important to realize that. He's talking to Yisharal. He says, listen, Yisharal. Listen, Yisharal. Yishin, Yisharal. Got it? Love is obviously not merely an emotion. Love is obviously not merely an emotion, because you can't order someone to feel a certain emotion. You feel love right now. You love me. Feel it. Do it. You can't order someone to feel something. But behavior is very different. So love is obviously not merely an emotion, because you can't order someone to feel a certain emotion, but a behavior is a very different issue. Yahushua's love cannot be mimicked or faked. It must be genuine and real. You can't fake it. It involves more than just physical action. Love is a state of mind as well as a physical response. In fact, the type of love that Yahushua desires is also a state of our spirit too. Is there an emotional component to love? Of course there is. However, that would be the final result of all the other factors put together first. Another way to look at this instruction to love Yahushua is to understand. So what are we talking about here? We've gone past listen Yisharal, Yahuwah is our Elohim, Yahuwah is one. And now we're talking about love Yahuwah with all of your heart. Up here? Right here. Listen Yisharal, hear me now and get this into your skulls. Yahuwah is the only living Elohim and he is one. Got it? Not 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. None of the others are real. They're fake, a rip-off, smoke too. So, love Yahuwah your Elohim with all of your heart, all of your being, and with all of your strength. That's what we're dealing with now. Love Yahuwah your Elohim with all of your heart, with all of your being, with all of your strength. We've been talking about what love is. It's not an emotion. It involves emotion, but love is an outward behavior, a response. It can't just be emotional, because you can't order someone to feel something, but you can order them to behave a certain way. But having said that, he doesn't want legalistic, robotic love either. He's giving his instructions so that people know how to please him, how to make him happy, how to have his protection, how to have him in their midst, because he's set apart. If they don't want to do it, free will, do what you want. But this is what I expect. This is who I am. And if you want to be with me, this is how you got to behave. Yeah. Another way to look at this instruction to love Yahushua is to understand that love is the opposite of hate. Love is the opposite of hate. Often in the scriptures we are told to hate things that Yahushua hates. But due to our Western mindsets, we see hatred in the same way that we see love, something that involves our emotions. However, the true scriptural meaning of hate is closer to our English word reject. Reject. So whenever the scripture says hate, scratch it out and think reject. That's closer to what it really means for us. Because hate is just ugh. It's an emotional response. No. Reject is a behavior. Or as far as our relationship with Yahushua is concerned, untrustworthy or adulterous. To hate Yahushua is to reject him. To be untrustworthy or adulterous. And since Yahushua and his instructions are one, because he is the living words made flesh, then to hate his instructions is to reject him, cast him aside, disobey him, to be untrustworthy and adulterous. And this is not love. This ain't love. So we're talking about what love is. Love must be felt, love must be a decision, love must be all-encompassing. You know? At the end of the day, it's a behavior, it's a choice, how you're going to go. So we have to love him with all of our heart. All of our heart? We are told to love Yahushua with all of our heart, our being, our mind, and our strength. Heart indeed refers to the organ inside our chest that pumps blood. However, the Hebrew concept is what function the heart performs beyond only pumping blood. Like when we're instructed to store away something in our hearts, or to not have hate for our brother in our hearts. In our Western mindset, the heart is the seat of our emotions and our morality, even our character. However, the Hebrews knew of the heart as the seat of intellect and conscious thought, the place of our memory and where actions and behaviors are contemplated and decisions are made. This is interesting, isn't it? Our Western mindset, it's all gushy-mushy emotions, emotions and morality and everything. The Hebrews understood that they thought from their heart. Conscious thought, seat of the intellect, place where memory and where actions and behaviours are contemplated. They understood, as Yahusha intended, that we think from our heart. We don't just feel from our heart and think from our brain. This is well documented historic fact. It was at a much later date, the late Hellenistic period to the medieval time, that the function of the brain was finally understood to be where the intellect and all thought processes reside. So to the heart was transferred the function of emotion, desire and passion, to be in line with Greek thought on the matter. Our Western society is so riddled with the Greek philosophies. The heart is where you feel and the mind is where you think. Mind, heart, never the two shall mix. That's not how it was. So if we truly want to understand what Yahusha means, when he says heart, we should simply scratch that word out and insert brain or mind. And since we think from our heart anyway, the point is simply to state that our obedience or heart condition is not about our emotions, but our outward behaviour. Having said that though, you do it because you want to, because you love him, not out of dead obligation. You do it because you love him, because it pleases you and him to be obedient. You feel amazing. So this was exciting to me because a few months ago, there were articles on Facebook about the heart and it was a blowout. It was amazing. We talked about the heart. This is just a little rundown here. The heart is crooked above all and desperately sick. Who can know it? I, Yahusha, search the heart, trying the courage and giving every man according to what path he's on and the fruit of his behaviour. We can see here, above all else, guard your heart. What you see, say, do, hear, everything you do flows from your heart. Yeah? We think from our heart. That was amazing, wasn't it? The heart is the centre of our being. The centre of our being is in our hearts. This is where our being lives, from our hearts, as far as scriptural truth tells us. The worldly wisdom does not agree with this understanding, but Jeremiah explains the situation of an uncircumcised heart. And this is the reason why Yahusha wants a bride with a clean heart, and why we must purge worldly behaviour from our blood-washed hearts. Guard your heart above all else. So that's amazing, isn't it? The heart is not the seat of our emotions. The heart is where we think from. We think from our heart. Our mind is just like an antenna. Our mind is the filter system. But we think from our heart. We decide from our heart. We behave from our heart. We speak from our heart. Yeah? That's what the heart means. So we're to love Yahusha with all of our heart, with all of our, many translations say soul. Love Yahusha with all of your heart, with all of your soul. Do we have a soul? Are we really immortal? Soul is a pagan concept, so we just say being. With all of our heart, with all of our being. What does that mean? The Hebrew word nefesh entails life, our life essence, breath, the mysterious breath of life that Yahusha breathed into his created creatures to make them alive. The self, that unique quality that makes us at once human and yet also in Yahusha's image, and at times can even refer to our deepest innermost thoughts. Nefesh is most often translated as soul, but that's a pagan deceptive term. Most people believe we are made up of three: body, soul and spirit. We're going to see here by these scriptures that there's only two components. Matthew 28, don't be afraid of those who can kill your body, flesh, but can't kill your being, nefesh, but instead be afraid of the one who can destroy both your body and being. So there's only two: body and being, flesh and nefesh. Nefesh and flesh and nefesh. Both here, where's the both? Don't be afraid of that, be afraid of the one who can destroy both. both. Both indicates two parts, and one of the parts is unable to be destroyed, except by the one who created it. This being, Nefesh, is what gives life to our flesh. James also speaks of two parts, and one is essential to the other. James 2, just like your body without the spirit is dead, so your belief without works, obedient behaviour, is dead too. Again, we only see two parts, and the spirit of a person is the unseen, indestructible and vital part of their makeup. The flesh is a tent, a veil, container, or earthen vessel in which a special treasure resides. Yahusha brings us his spirit to join with our spirit, our nefesh. However, after the vulnerable part, our flesh, dies, our second part, the spirit, is subject to death also. But for Yahusha's bride who overcome, there will be no second death. Interesting. I'm not going to go into all this first resurrection, second resurrection stuff. The first man, Adam, was immortal, deathless, until he was disobedient and fell, and death entered the universe. Scientists have discovered that the slowing of the speed of light makes distant objects seem to be very ancient, while before the fall, light was probably instantaneous. Wrap your mind around that. Scientists have discovered that the slowing of the speed of light makes distant objects seem to be very ancient, while before the fall, light was probably instantaneous. Light was probably instantaneous. I read somewhere ages ago that Adam and Ḥawwa could, what did they say? They could hear light. They could hear things like, was it the light? I forget now. It was amazing. Their senses were different, you know. They could hear the light almost. I'll look that up. It was amazing. Their senses were different, you know, because the science behind it was different. It was a different world. So light was probably instantaneous. What does that mean? Speed of light, there was no speed, it was just instantaneous. A dimensional shift or rift occurred between our current lower space realm dimension with Yahusha's higher one, resulting in radical changes in the physical universe. In our inner being, nefesh, we are able to still perceive eternity because Yahusha made us with this ability. But our understanding is still very limited, and our minds are darkened without Yahusha. Another evidence of mankind having two parts, not three, is seen in the words of Yahusha. John 3, whoever has been reborn of the flesh is only flesh, but those who have been reborn of the Spirit are spirit. Yeah? If our spirit has been reborn by the Spirit of Yahusha, for the sole purpose of training in overcoming, we possess eternal life. So that's our being, our inner being, our nefesh. Yeah? So we're to love him with all of our heart, which is also our mind, our reasoning, our seat of understanding and decision making. We are to love him with all of our heart, with all of our being, not soul, being, which we've just dealt with, nefesh, and with all of our strength. The final part of this instruction, usually translated as with all of your might, is a rare phrase, which means very, 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 very much. The idea is that we are to put forth exceedingly great effort and conscious thought into loving Yahusha, as this is what he expects from his bride, as would any husband. Interestingly, Deuteronomy is the first book of Moses' writings to actually speak of loving Yahusha. Previous books spoke in terms of awe and reverence and fear. This in no way means that Moses is not saying, forget the awe and the reverence and the fear and no longer fear Yahusha, just replace that with love. No way. Rather, the idea is that awe and reverence is to be in the context of love, or as with the correct scriptural definition of what love is. Awe and reverence is to be in the context of acceptance, loyalty, and submission to him. You understand? This is all what encompasses love and relationship with Yahusha. So, now that you know that Yahuwah is the only living Elohim, and he is one, there's only one person to be worshipped. Worship him. Love him with all of your heart, with all of your being, and with all of your strength. And put all of Yahuwah's instructions into your heart. Into your heart. I thought it was Yahusha and the New Testament that spoke about writing things on your heart. The Old Testament's all about writing it in stone. It's hard and harsh and... No, we want the New Testament. What does it say here? This is why I'm loving this. It's just debunking everything that we've always believed. All this segregation of the Old and New Testaments. It's all BS. Look what Moses is saying here. Imagine Moses listening to all this stuff. They're giving credit to the Messiah saying all this stuff, and Moses, I said that centuries ago. Put all of Yahuwah's instructions into your heart. Tell them to your children over and over again. Talk about them all the time, whether you're at home or walking along the road or going to bed at night or getting up in the morning. Keep them at the front of your mind at all times. Guard your ear gates and eye gates with them and obediently behave them always. Keep them at the front of your mind at all times, which is on your heart. Guard your ear gates and eye gates with them and obediently behave them always. This is the behavior revolution version here. This isn't the post them all over your doorposts of your home and write them on your elbows and hands and wrists and little toe and big toe and on the back of your ass cheek. No, don't do all that stuff. Understand that it's talking about behavior. Guard them. Ears, eyes, guard them on your heart at all times. It's a behavior. Putting Yahusha's instructions, and here's the opposite here, there's a picture there. Because mankind just takes it literally, of course. We've got to write them all over our door. Look at it. Look at this guy, he's graffitied. Look at the door frame here. Just look at the house. He's wrecking the house, graffitiing the house. Sticking weird little boxes on it. You know, look at this freak show here. They've got them wrapped around their wrists and on their biceps and on their head. A box of the instructions on their head. They got 𝗳𝗓𝗃. Oh my goodness, look at this dude. That's intense, isn't it? Well, this is what religion does. Takes the ink on the page and let's make it into a religious mindset to set ourselves apart, and it's ours. No. You've got to understand what Yahusha's talking about here. Do you think he would rock up today and tell us to do these things? But he would say this: write them on your heart, keep them at the front of your mind, on your heart at all times. Guard your ear gates and eye gates with them. And obediently behave them always. Putting Yahusha's instructions into our heart means they are to be held in the behavior of our thinking, which is done in our heart anyway. So they can be known, contemplated, mulled over, acted upon and behaved, rather than just felt. The essence of the notion that Yahusha's instructions are to be written on our hearts, our minds, is that his instructions are to become part of our very being and fibre, not something separate from us. Writing them on our hearts is our minds are our heart, our hearts, our minds. We think from our hearts, so it's to be the very fibre of our being. Yisharal is to teach these instructions to their children also. This is not an idle suggestion. Moses isn't spending all this time and energy giving a thorough restatement of the instructions and explaining them all just as some kind of ceremony, celebrating the beginning of the war to conquer the promised land. Rather, it was because this new generation didn't know much of the instructions. In just one generation, much of the instructions had been lost. Their parents, these parents, who were the original Exodus generation, now dead and gone, did not do their duty and teach their children his instructions, nor did they follow them themselves. This is the foundation and origin of those who consider themselves the Jews, Israel, or the older brother. This is their claim to fame, their lineage, their legacy. What is it? Wicked, disobedience, and heresy. Would you come under this mindset or this here? Look at the behavior. I'm not looking at the people here, they're probably innocent. I'm looking at the mindset, the religious bondage of it all. Look at it. Would you come under this mindset or religious bondage now that Yahushua has liberated you and opened a portal of connection on your heart? Would you? Would you? Look at this. Aren't we so blessed? This is why I'm thoroughly enjoying these scriptures, guys. These scriptures are going to be different. To start with, they're free. And, I want anybody to be able to pick these up and read them and understand them. There's no Hebrew in them apart from Yahushua, the name of Yahushua, but that's his name. There's no Hebrew. You don't have to go on a crash course to understand Yahushua's word. No. You can hand this to your children. You can hand it to anybody. And they'll understand how they're supposed to behave. Because this is how Yahushua would be if he walked among us today. Yahuwah promised your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that he would give you this land, and now he'll take you there and give you large towns with good buildings that you didn't build, and houses full of good things that you didn't put there. Yahuwah will give you wells that you didn't have to dig, and vineyards, orchards, and olive trees that you didn't have to plant. But when you have eaten so much that you can't eat anymore, be on guard. And don't forget that it was Yahuwah who set you free from slavery and brought you out of Egypt. Don't forget when you get all fat and comfortable and full and can't eat anymore, that it was Yahuwah who delivered you, set you free and brought you out of Egypt. Serve and obey him with fear and trembling, and promise that you'll be loyal to only him. And don't have anything to do with the foreign deities and idols that are worshipped by the nations around you. Because if you do bow down and serve them, Yahuwah will be furious and wipe you off the face of the earth. He's with you. He's with you. So don't test him and try to make him prove that he can help you as you did at Massa. Always obey the instructions that Yahuwah has given you and behave in a way that pleases him. Then you'll be able to go in and take this good land from your enemies, just as Yahuwah promised your ancestors. Makes sense? Don't test Yahuwah. Don't test Yahushua. The vast majority of the people Moses is talking to didn't have this experience at Massa because they were either not born or they were but young children. Yet it must be that this infamous happening had become part of the standard tales that parents told their children, because Moses makes no attempt to reiterate the circumstances. The mere mention of the name Massa was enough for his audience to fully understand his point. The idea is that Yisharal should not determine for themselves what right and wrong is, or whether Yahushua's instructions are optional or even fair and just. Rather, their job is not to question and decide, but to learn and follow those instructions. We get the definition of what right in Yahushua's sight. We get the definition of what is right in Yahushua's sight, and it is to obey his instructions. It has nothing to do with being good, nice, tolerant, or pious looking, or happy according to our own thoughts and philosophies. It's only about obedient behavior. So, don't test Yahushua like your parents did in the wilderness. And someday your children will ask, why did Yahuwah give us these instructions and directions to live by? And you will answer, we were slaves to the Pharaoh of Egypt, but with a strong hand Yahuwah set us free. We saw him perform magnificent signs and wonders and make horrible things happen to the Pharaoh, his officials, and all the Egyptians. Yes, Yahuwah rescued us from Egypt so he could bring us into this land, as he had promised our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's why Yahuwah our Elohim demands that we obey his instructions and serve him with fear and trembling. And if we do, he will protect us and make us successful, because obedient behavior actually means to guard his instructions in our hearts and seek to passionately do them at all times. That's what obedient behavior is. To guard his instructions in our hearts and seek to passionately do them at all times. Obedience brings about goodness and overall well-being towards us as a gift from Yahusha. The things that he would like to give us, he is able to give us because of our obedience. It is the opposite when we disobey, trespass against him, and thus incur guilt before him. And in that case, his justice does not enable him to give us the shalom, the overall well-being, that he so greatly desires to give us. Isn't that amazing? So, not only have we seen, it's not just about hearing, it's about listening and doing and behaving, not just hearing, listening. Listen, Yisharal. Listen, Linda. Listen to me, Linda. Listen. You're not listening. You're not listening. So listen, what is love? We talked about love. We're to love Yahuwah, love Yahusha with all of our heart, with all of our being, with all of our strength. This is what Yahusha quoted when the religious folks were trying to catch him out. This is the greatest of the instructions. This is the summary. This is Yahusha like to summarize things too. What's the most important instruction that Moses gave? Easy. Listen, Yisharal, Yahuwah is one. Yeah, the only living Elohim. So love him with all of your heart, with all of your heart, with all of your being, and with all of your strength. Don't test him. Let's finish on this, guys. This was amazing. It's about hidden. What does hidden mean? Natsar, to guard. In a good sense, to protect, maintain, obey. Or a bad one, to conceal. Besieged, hidden thing. Keep monument, observe, preserve, submit, watcher. So, I'm going to talk about something hidden here. This is what it's all become, hasn't it? Look at this here. This is what it's all become. Religious scholars and men of importance patting each other on the backs, pointing to great and wonderful things, statues and obelisks. Let's talk about the hidden thing. The secret. It's a secret. In Colossians 1, I'm so glad that I can be a part of the suffering that Yahusha experiences daily for his assembly. And that's why it was his plan to make me your servant. This is Paul talking. He's so glad that he can be a part of... Paul's saying, I'm so glad that I can be a part of the suffering that Yahusha experiences daily for his assembly. And that's why it was his plan to make me your servant, to give you the fulfillment of his word. To give you the fulfillment of his word. What is the fulfillment of his word? Yes, this secret has been hidden for ages and centuries from the generations, but now it's been revealed to you, his bride, because he wants you to know just how precious and powerful this secret is, which is available for all nations, no matter what their lineage. What is this hidden secret for all nations? Because Paul's saying this is the whole reason he's been sent to you. Tell you what this secret is. No one knows what it is. What is this hidden secret for all nations? This secret, of course, is Messiah now living within you, which is our hope of sharing in his esteem. That's the secret. The Messiah, Yahusha, now lives within us. And in Psalm 25, the secret of Yahusha is with those who fear him. And he makes his eternal blood covenant of deliverance known to them. We just talked about fearing him and obeying him with all of our hearts, all of our being, with all of our strength. This secret, the hidden secret of life is not about the monuments to idolatry that mankind has erected and filled this earth with, but the fact and truth of Messiah within you. we see that Yahushua gave Moses the 10 commands and the instructions to rid themselves of the wickedness of idolatry. But it was up to this chosen nation to put off their idolatrous behavior and behave the words of the blood covenant, showing the world the difference between clean and unclean behaved living. We see Israel return from Babylon with a changed language and a token of a changed instruction too. Remember, Satan is always trying to hide and change the precious words of Yahushua. So Constantine mixed the cultural instructions of Babylon with the Mazzaroth, interpreting this mixture into Greek, causing many words to be lost. He then did the same with Latin and other languages, and all this happened 300 years after the death of Yahushua our Messiah, who renewed the blood covenant once again. Even though the disciples had been dead for some time, Satan never reckoned on a remnant who have been bringing a Besorah right until today. Good news. Satan's confused interpretations can never hide the truth and power of Yahushua's word. Satan's confused interpretations can never hide the truth and power of Yahushua's word, which he's still spreading to his chosen bride. The tabernacle became the temple, then the temple became our bodies. And Yahushua loves us so much that he opened a portal in our hearts, just like he opened a portal to his dimension in the tabernacle in the wilderness. As he dwelt in the presence of his people then, today he dwells in our hearts, leading and guiding us through this dark world of idolatry. Yahushua within is life in itself. It is abundance of the senses and miraculous. This is what has been hidden throughout the ages, but through Yahushua is now revealed to those who want to be with him eternally. What a beautiful way to sum up everything we've been talking about today. Here, listen, Yisharal. This is who your creator is. This is who your maker, your Elohim is. And this is how you are to behave towards him. Love him with all of your heart, with all of your being, with all of your strength. And what did Yahushua do? He opened portals, because he loves us so much. This is just a blowout, guys. I mean, we're talking about portals. And look at them here. Look at these guys here. Completely up themselves. Talking great, deep, philosophical, spiritual matters. Leading the sheep, leading them astray. Look at these guys. What hope does mankind have? Looking at the Jewish people. Looking at the Christianity. What hope do they have? Come out from among them all, guys. Come out from your assemblies. The Messianics, the Nazarenes, all of them are following this behavior. They might have the correct names, they might have the feasts, they might have all these things, A, B, C, D, and E, but what are they modeling their behavior on? Yeah? Their outward behavior. Is it religious? Because Yahushua hates all this. Yahushua doesn't do any of this. So it's not about what you declare yourself as and your labels and everything like that and what you're writing, labeling yourself with. It's about your relationship, as we dealt with last episode, the relationship, your heart obedience. So I just thought this was beautiful. Paul's coming along saying, this is why I've been sent to you. I don't mind that I'm sitting in a prison cell suffering for you instead of you. I'm experiencing the suffering of Messiah that he experiences every day because of his bride. I'm here to tell you about this secret that's been hidden for the ages. And now it's being made available to all nations, not just the Jews, not just the Yahudim, for all nations who will, not, the blood covenant is only with Yisharal, but all nations are welcome to graft in, graft into the blood covenant, not graft into a group of people, a lineage, graft into Yahusha. Graft into Yahusha. Not be something separate. And what is this secret? He no longer dwells in temples. He no longer dwells in tabernacles, in vessels made with hands. He now dwells in us. This was the secret. This was the culmination. This was the fulfillment of all script. This was the marriage home starting to be formed, This was Yahusha's legacy, why he came in the first place. So that the veil of his flesh could be rent, so that he could be consumed, used up as the power source, as the fuel, as the energy for his inner spirit to go forth into the world and light all these sparks, open up all these portals. So this is the hidden secret of life. Not about monuments of idolatry, it's Messiah within us. So, Yahusha loves us so much that he opened a portal in our hearts, just like he opened a portal to his dimension in the tabernacle in the wilderness. Yahusha within us is life in itself. It is abundance of the senses and miraculous. This is what has been hidden throughout the ages, but through Yahusha is now revealed to those who want to be with him eternally. Hallelujah. Isn't that amazing? I'm going to leave it there today, guys. I love you. And stay strong. We'll be back soon.